Thank you. All right, so welcome to the debate, everybody. The debate is co-sponsored by Youth Central, so thank you, candidates, for being here. This is truly amazing for our students because it's an educational experience that they probably wouldn't get otherwise, so we appreciate you guys being here. So, feel free to clap there. You can. All right, so I don't know if this is working or if you can hear me. You can hear me? Yeah? Okay. Let me go over the format very quickly. I'm going to give you guys, first, once I'm done talking, you'll get 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, and I kind of went over the statement. I will tell everybody. Otherwise, the format is, we have 4 major questions. I will draw names as to which candidates will get to do those questions, and then the candidates have, can one of you hold up your rebuttal cards? If a candidate is not chosen and they feel if they feel they'd like to rebut that question, they have 1 opportunity and only 1. Candidates, once you have done your rebuttal, I'd like you to put your card on the ground so you no longer have access to it, okay? Thank you very much. All right, with that, and then once we've done that, I'll put the names back in and we'll start again. And then at the very end, we have 1 question for all the candidates to answer. And if we still have a little bit of time, I might have a surprise question to throw at you. Fair? All right. So let's start with, I'm going to give you each 2 minutes to introduce yourselves. With that introduction, I would like you to talk about, in your introduction, how the city of Calgary is growing and what challenges the youth of today may face within the next 10 years. Okay? So, Dr. Gabriel, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to be here and share my solutions with you. I guess I will use the mic. Can you hear me now?
Is it turned on? There you go. Yes.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to be here and share my solutions with you. My name is Emil Gabriel, and to answer your question, the challenges that will be facing the youth will occur mainly if we continue to keep the current broken and destructive system at the City Hall. This system is systematically taking away your basic right to have a decent job, a decent place to live in, and a decent income. Let's recognize the symptom of the problem. For many years, from many people, I heard them telling me about the wasteful management under the current administration and under the current leadership. I heard about the poor urban planning due to a leadership lacking the appropriate experience. But I'm here today to speak to you about the solution. You need to elect a person who knows how to manage a city successfully. May I suggest to you to look at 2 main issues. Number 1, look at the person's background. See if they've done any significant volunteer work for the community, for example. Because the person's history is indicative of what you expect from the mayor. The second thing you need to pay attention to is this city is a growing city. We have infrastructure projects, transportation, urban planning. Look for the person who has the right experience in this area. Because the person who's the most experienced is the one who's going to give you the best plan for the city. Finally, remember that I'm the only candidate here is committed to term limits to end the era of career politicians that they are in it for themselves, not for you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Mr. David Lack. You get 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Hello, Forest Lawn High School. It's a real pleasure to be here. I think it's wonderful that we are having this here today. We can participate in the democratic process. Folks, I'm from Northeast Calgary. I grew up in Rundle, so not far from here. Gosh, I love the Northeast, I love the Southeast. And guys, I really think that this election, this is a generational election, right? This is about a bit of the changing of the guard. Where are we gone? Where are we gonna go? Right? This is about direction. And we have a choice before us, the same old or a brand new path, right? So I think those are the 2 choices ahead of us. And I really believe that we need to think about what world are we leaving, what city are we leaving the next generation, right? It's very, very important. Are you gonna have jobs and opportunities? Are you gonna have safe communities, welcoming, respectful communities? Right? These are the sorts of questions we're going to be discussing today. And folks, I think it is very important that you guys participate. Never let anyone look down on your youth. Never, ever let anyone look down on your youth. You can do anything that you put your mind to. You can do anything. I want that to be very clear to you guys as youth. I think it's wonderful that you're participating. So thanks for having us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Mr. Nenshi. You're up, 2 minutes, sir.
Well, thanks very much, Mr. Shoji, and let me say thank you to Forest Lawn High School and Youth Central for hosting us today. It's always great to come back to Forest Lawn High School. I too grew up in this neighborhood, and I took the #1 bus to our family business on 17th Avenue, the Forest Laundry. I wish I had come up with that name because it's genius. And folded people's laundry while I was doing my homework in junior high. So I know the neighborhood very well, and I understand that this neighborhood works because it's a place of opportunity, because it's a place of opportunity for everyone. And that really is what we need to continue to build over the next 10 years. It means we have to work on a more sustainable and environmentally friendly Calgary, a Calgary where diversity and pluralism is seen as our strength, a Calgary with more accessible and safe public transit, a Calgary that welcomes people to the city from every corner of this earth to give them a place of safety, a place of welcome, and a place of opportunity. The reason this city works is because we understand a very basic truth that many in the world just don't believe in today. And that truth is that it doesn't matter what you look like or where you come from. It doesn't matter how you worship or whom you love. It doesn't matter who your daddy is or where you went to school. Every single one of us deserves the chance right here, right now, to live a great Canadian life. And that happens because we fight for it every single day. Because we fight for good public infrastructure, we fight for opportunity for everyone, whether it's libraries or rec centers or public transit, and we continue to fight for the dignity of every single human being. And as we know, in a bitter and divided world, the forces that want to divide us are prevailing over those that want to bring us together, and we have to fight against that to make sure every one of us has an opportunity to succeed.
Thank you. All right, next. Mr. Olson, sir, you're up.
Well, good morning to each and every one of you, and thank you to Youth Central for coordinating this. You know, I look around the room, and I am just really struck by the diversity in this space. In fact, our entire city, the diversity is really strong. I very much view that as a real strength for our city. You know, if we look about that issue, the question is, what's the biggest issue facing you guys? You know, right now, we have our city debt is about $4 billion. And over the past 7 years, it's increased nearly $1 billion. That's a huge amount. And so your mom and dad, you guys in 10 years, are going to be faced with dealing with that. Because at the end of the day, we have to really think about how do we fund a city going forward in a way that's sustainable. The practices that we have right now are not sustainable. Last week, I called for open government. This C on my chest really is about my work plan, or my campaign for the next 4 weeks. And it's really a work plan for the next 4 years. And I'll be working for you. I can say that I'll be working for you because there are also, this is where we got to scratch beneath the surface. There are some candidates on this stage, some who are not here today, that are funded by either the special interest candidate, the special interest of Calgary, or the Old Boys Establishment Club. What I mean by that is they will accept donations of $5,000 in whatever that might be, private wine and cheese, cash for access events. When that happens, they will never speak, they will never care about real Calgarians. They cannot, because they've been bought by people who have had their ear. My campaign, I'm only asking, and it's symbolic, for $20.17. It's an amount that allows everybody to raise their voice. And speaking of voice, we also have to think, I'm gonna plant the seed. Global media, our local media, for the last 3 weeks, has not covered my campaign for mayor. I'm gonna ask yourselves, we'll talk about the other debate, why is the local media not covering Curtis Olson's campaign for mayor? Think about that. Think about that when you think about what's happening with our city and that goes around. We'll talk more later.
Thank you. Jason, sir, I don't know how to say your last name, so do you want to?
You know it. It's a Timichuk.
Timichuk.
I get Ukrainian name from the prairie.
All right.
But my artist name is Jason Gogo.
Jason Gogo. Well, Mr. Gogo, it's yours. 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. You know, just elaborating on what Mr. Olson just said recently, you know, about this job, the more I see this job, you know, back when I was in high school, in the yearbook, they voted me most likely to become a puppet. And it's kind of prophetic when you really, really think about it. And what he's talking about, special interest groups, people who pay for these candidates. The whole thing about the original question here is this. What's 10 years gonna look like? What's a snapshot gonna be? Is Amazon gonna be dropping off things with drones? You know, are a lot of your opportunities gonna be replaced by automation? You know, the last 7 years in this city, I remember back 7 years ago when it was vibrant, there was opportunity. People were talking about a lot of things. But you know, the problem with the last 7 years is we've had a very stagnant city council. I don't wanna point fingers at the mayor, I don't wanna point fingers at the council. All I know is that there's an incredible amount of apathy. People feel like their vote doesn't matter. I'm really concerned about this election, and that's why I'm running. Because I don't think people feel like their vote counts anymore. And you know, that comes back to the theme of my campaign. Nothing's getting done. Flood mitigation, it hasn't gotten done. The arena deal, it hasn't gotten done. The Green Line, it hasn't gotten done. We've heard a lot about it. You know, when they called it the Green Line initially, I thought it was an environmental thing. But it's just gonna cost you lots of green. You know, because it's not getting done. Secondary suites, when you enter the world in the workforce, they haven't gotten done. So what you have to ask yourself is, why haven't things gotten done?
Time.
And in the next 10 years, will there be opportunities if they still haven't gotten done?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Brent, you're up, sir. 2 minutes.
Good day, students. And I'm glad that you showed up here, and I hope you listen to each and every one of us and think, well, hey, what are they going to offer, and what are they going to provide? And don't let them blow smoke up like they have before. And I just want to be held accountable along with all the counselors. That way, when something's wrong in your area, get your parents to call the alderperson, have them document the date, the time, who they spoke to, even if it's an answering machine. And then if that alderperson hasn't got a hold of you in a week, call me on the 8th day. I'll come out and see what the problem is, call somebody in that department to get it fixed, and I'll be helping get it done, instead of blowing smoke or passing the buck. And then this arena deal should have already been completed, but hey, let's pass the buck on to somebody else. We'll force the play to somebody else, blame somebody else, or get off the pot. And then that way, you gotta take a bull by the horns, ride it, get it done. And I want to be there for the people. I wanna bring my wage down back to reality and ask council to do likewise, because there's too many people that have lost their employment and our things are tight as is. So I want to lead by example, cut things down and make things happen. Because I already know some people with a lot of land that we could put the arena on. So I'm gonna approach them, and then I'm gonna approach the Flames. Take care and enjoy.
Thank you, sir. And last, Mr. Heather, you're up, sir.
Yes, Larry Heather, Twitter, @Calgary Senate, if you want to follow me. God save the Queen and protect her realm, and not get distracted by subdivided sovereignties that don't exist. Good morning to the students and teachers at Forest Lawn High School, and all those listening in. It looks like we got Facebook Live happening. With a growing Calgary, students 10 years from now will be challenged with a Calgary that is overburdened with debt and unable to maintain the operating costs of the extensive projects undertaken in the Nenshi regime. The rapid expansion of unaffordable recreation centers, while the older ones suffer in maintenance neglect. The overemployment of planners in Calgary, designing ever more complex, interlocking, unaffordable, utopian plans. Calgary is Detroiting, that's a new verb by me, Detroiting under the Nenshi era regime. Over one third of inner city Detroit is reverting to greenfield. So that's after voters have refused to elect a conservative politician since 1961. And Calgary is known for electing left-wing mayors in particular. So the question in the position of mayor, who is the boss
30
of
seconds.
the boss? I work for a Jewish carpenter. His name is Jesus Christ, and I bring him to the job every day. I will bring the mayor's office under the lordship of Jesus Christ, and he's really, really smart. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that concludes our introduction round, and that. So I am very non-biasedly gonna pick out some papers here. So 4 candidates. So I will pick out 4 slips. That's 3, 4. So you 4 gentlemen will be Mr. Colson, Brent, Dr. Gabriel, Curtis Olson, and David Lapp. You will each get 2 minutes. This is your question. Are you ready? And Mr. Lapp or
Who's
Dr.
Colson?
Sorry, did I say it wrong?
Who's Colson?
That would be you. Do you want to?
You're badly mistaken, it's Chisholm.
Oh, sorry, I pulled the wrong one. I apologize. Mr. Chisholm, it is you. All right? So, thank you for correcting me, and I apologize. So, Mr. Chisholm, you are there. We're going to start with Dr. Gabriel, and then Mr. Lapp will go next. Mr. Chisholm will go after that, and then Curtis Olson. Okay? So, the question is, and you will have 2 minutes to answer this. If elected mayor, how would you plan to improve our public transit to make it safer, more accessible, and affordable to students and citizens? So, Dr. Gabriel is going to go first, sir.
Thank you for the question. I think the good news, as I mentioned in my introduction, you need somebody who have the experience in the area. I'm a civil engineer. I spent 7 years of my life working, building highways, working with transportation. So I'm not coming to learn on the job. I have the required experience. I study what's happening in the city, how the city is planned, and out of the mouth of the councillors in many meetings, they testify to the fact that this city and the planning and the urban planning can be described in one word. It's called hodgepodge. This is very sad because the city has a wonderful future and potential. So when I come to the city, I will look at all this planning that's in place and examine it in the light of the knowledge and experience I had. I spent 4 years to take a degree, 20 years experience. So I'm going to bring my transfer skill to the city. And we're going to look at those projects. Transportation. Is it optimum? Does it serve the real needs? Students, for example. Hospitals. You see, when you plan strategic. You look at the high demand area. Hospitals, universities, recreation area where many people go to this area. Once you identify this area, you start now directing your transportation to this area. What happened in the city is the opposite. They go behind closed doors, they make some deals
30 seconds.
to help them get re-elected, and they plan the transportation this way. That's not the right way to do it. I will use my experience to do it right for the city of Calgary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lapp, you're up next. Do you need to repeat the question?
No, it's about transportation. I got it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
No worries. 2 minutes.
So, public transportation is very, very important for any self-respecting city, for any growing, dynamic city, which Calgary is. So, growing up in Northeast Calgary, I was in the Calgary Boys Choir, and I remember there were many, many times I had to go downtown to choral practices on the train and the bus. And I took the and I took the train downtown, and I took the number 7 bus. To get to choir practice. And so many Calgarians and young Calgarians get around on public transit, so it is extremely vital. A few years back, I was a dishwasher at a downtown restaurant, and I remember there were many times where I would have to close, and the trains would stop running, and I would be out of luck, right? And so the answer would be, well, do I pay for $30 or $40 cab ride home, or do I call a family member who's probably in bed? Right, so you're a bit stranded, and I fear that actually probably a bunch of you guys have been in a position where you've been stranded on transit. And I think it's quite concerning, transit service levels. and as well the lateness of transit in terms of in the evening and also on the weekends, how often it runs and how late it runs. I think we need to correct that and have 24-hour transit in this city, and we need to improve some of the sheltering in terms of bus shelters for when you're waiting for the bus,
30 seconds.
freezing in the cold. So folks, I really think that 24-hour transit is huge, and thank you so much.
Do you want me to repeat the question, or are you good? So the question is, if elected mayor, how would you plan to improve our public transit to make it safer, more accessible, and affordable to students and other citizens? You're welcome, sir. 2 minutes.
Yes, how I could improve public transit is speak to each community association, and they can fill myself in along with the different council persons. That way we know right from the people's mouth to know where things can be achieved, how things can get better, get more input, more answers can come forward out of more ideas. And then that way, people aren't going to be stranded like too many people are. And then by that different, let's say it comes 3 times an hour during the week, and once an hour or more on weekends. You better learn how to get a bicycle. But then city council, there's coming down Home Road, I spoke to some people there. They want to put a bike lane down there when there's already one a block over. Like, how stupid can you get? Talk to the people in those areas and see what they want. Because if you don't live in that area, inquire. If you don't inquire, you don't know. That way you can get an informed decision made by people in the knowledge. So please, people, think about what you're going to do, what you're going to vote for, and have them use their heads instead of their pocketbook. The only thing they're worried about. Take care and enjoy it.
Thank you, sir. And the last one, Mr. Olson, would you like me to repeat the question, or you're good?
No, I'm great, thanks. So what I'm going to ask you guys to think about right now is kind of an Uber thinking mindset. You know, Uber has a phrase, code in the morning, change the way a city moves in the afternoon. The reality of it is our city transit system doesn't have any accurate data. You need to have data to drive your decisions. The problem with that is, if we don't have that data, we can't run trains the way we don't know how to really have our express buses running the proper way. We don't know really anything about anything right now, because we don't have, there's no estimate. All we have is estimates, forecasts, and predictions. Without data to drive decisions, you can't make good decisions. And so that Uber thinking is what we need to really employ. And on that note, too, it ties into our transit system as well, because it's our integrated transportation system. They have in San Francisco, Portland. You know, let's say, I'm not sure your name, but I'll just say, let's say this is the founder of Uber, super innovator, and she's a graduate of the University of Calgary, who that fellow was, Garrett Camp. Let's say it's not just, and for years this particular government said, we don't want you here. We do not want you here in the city. You heard all about that Uber stuff going on. The problem with that is, you are a super innovator. You're you're number 3 to Mark Zuckerberg. You're in 60 countries worldwide, 300 cities. The problem with that is when we have a commercial vacancy rate that's 30%, you and all your friends here, every single person here in this room from Silicon Valley, if they say, hey, we want to invest in Canada, we want to come to Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, Waterloo, where should we go?
30 seconds.
You're probably not going to say Calgary. You're going to say maybe Toronto, Waterloo, or Vancouver. That's where government plays a role. Government has to open the doors to you and say, we want you here, and we want all your people here, and we want your mind here. We want your data driving our decisions for an integrated transportation system. That will only come with leadership. That's what I called last week for us data-driven, person-centered. I'm going to be talking transit in the next couple of weeks, but that's what it's going to take. And you do have a big choice, but you know what? Right now, your parents have a big choice.
And thank you, sir. All right. So, last 3 candidates in my jar to start this next question. We have Mr. Gogo, we have Mr. Heather, and Mr. Nenshi. Just a reminder, candidates, you do have the rebuttal card. If there was a question that you weren't chosen for, you are always welcome to use your 1 rebuttal to make your statement on that question. Candidates, your question is, what is your platform on increasing low-income housing for the citizens of Calgary? Let us start with Mr. Heather, then we will go to Mr. Gogo, and then Mr. Nenshi. How is that? Okay, so Mr. Heather, If you are ready, do you need me to repeat the question, sir?
No, that's fine.
Perfect. 2 minutes.
Yes, low-income housing, what we have is a situation where the developers in Calgary are being forced to put extra costs imported onto them by the Nenshi regime. So the price of affordable housing is skyrocketing. Then they take viable housing like Midfield Trailer Park and tell the people to get out because the Municipal Land Corp wants to make a big land swap. I think they're the biggest real estate speculators in the city. So they want to make money off that. They're kicking low-income and affordable housing people out of Midfield in a nice location so they can make money as a city. The city should not be in the business of real estate and land swapping as a business. So the costs for developing new homes is skyrocketing because of developer levies going on to the developers. They have to pass it on to the home buyers. The existing stock for Calgary housing is in a decrepit state. They've opened 2 new units in the last two months, 2 new complexes, but there's a whole stock that they can't afford to repair. And there's another stock that's empty because they're supposed to be paying more money so that lower income people can use the space. That doesn't work. That's contrary to reason. So we need to increase the economy of Calgary, the size of the pie, not just the division of the pie. And we need to make sure that we're not getting people into housing where they feel trapped and saying, well, I'm getting a subsidy, I guess I can't complain. Because that's what's happening now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bogo, you're up. Would you like me to reread the question?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So the question is, sorry, bear with me here. If you were to become mayor, what is the biggest change you hope to undertake for, oh no, sorry, that's the wrong one. Affordable housing. I switched my page. Here we go. What is your platform on increasing low-income housing for the citizens of Calgary?
Well, that's really interesting. If you can't get secondary suites done in 7 years, how are you going to have a platform on affordable housing? When you've got a city council that can't work together, 2 different councils, the same person at the helm, you don't even know who's at fault here. When you can't even complete a green line, when you bring the BRT, which should have been done, which I thought was done, back into the whole debate once again. People aren't discussing issues like affordable housing. They're debating them. What you need is results. Mr. Olson brought up Uber. Uber took a really, really long time to get to Calgary. I love Uber. Some of my friends drive for Uber because they bought a car, they lost their job. It enables them to keep their car. The thing about Uber was Uber didn't get done because of city council. Uber got done in spite of city council. The big problem is we have a broken city council and people that do not negotiate. They have no respect for each other. They don't share the victories and they don't take responsibility for the failures. I think the first thing we have to do is get a city council and a mayoral candidate that works together.
30 seconds.
And things like affordable housing, things like finishing all these projects, they'll just happen kind of more organically. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidate. I'm going to move on to our next question, so I'm going to...
Hey, you forgot me.
Oh, sorry, did I forget you? By all means, Mr. Nenshi, please talk.
Thanks. I might actually talk about housing, if that's okay. So, we have had a situation where the federal and provincial governments for the last 10 years or so have really abdicated their responsibility to housing. The good news is that both the current provincial and federal governments have mandated historic amounts of funding towards affordable housing. In the case of the federal government, over $12 billion over the next several years. So it's our job to really move on that. The challenge we have in Calgary is that the whole housing system is sort of clogged up because it's very expensive to buy a home People stay in rental housing longer than they used to. Because people are staying in rental housing longer, the rents are going up, which means very low income people can't afford market rental housing, which means that they're seeking subsidized accommodation, for example, through the Calgary Housing Company. So we have to have relief valves on every element of that. Attainable Homes Calgary is an opportunity for people who are working but can't save up the down payment to be able to get into home ownership and then free up a rental apartment. We are building lots and lots of units of subsidized housing, both as a government and with nonprofit partners. This summer, I opened 4 new affordable housing projects after we hadn't built a single one in many years. We're also refurbishing existing Calgary housing units to make them safer and more dignified for the people that live there. The biggest immediate thing, though, we need to do is we need to finally act on the secondary suite issue. Over 35,000 Calgarians live in illegal suites. And these people live, and a lot of them in this neighborhood, outside of the benefit of the law. If the smoke detector doesn't work, if there's mice, if there's mold, if your landlord is abusing you, there's nothing you can do because it's an illegal suite. We have to do what every other city in the country has done, which is legalize and regulate these suites. And it's true, council has been very, very hesitant to do that. We've lost it 40 times on an 8-7 vote. So as you vote, don't just vote for mayor, ask your councillor candidates what they're going to do to fix this issue.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to pick 3 names out of your phone, please. That way it's there. It's putting it on, I'll open them up. Reminder, candidates, that if you do not get a chance to answer this question, you do have your 1 rebuttal again. So this question will be for Mr. Olson, Mr. Lapp, and Mr. Chisholm. Kind of went the same way, didn't it? All right, here you go. Your question is, recently we have seen and heard a lot of negativity in the world. As mayor, what would you do to make Calgary a safer city for all citizens, regardless of their race, religion, or sexual orientation? Let's start with Mr. Lapp.
Well, of course, so the type of dialogue, the type of discussion that we're having in the public square these days is obviously getting quite concerning. A lot of tensions worldwide and also in the city. I am fully in support of a respectful debate, a respectful way of communicating in a democratic society. We've seen a lot of situations where violence has developed between different groups, protests and counter-protests, and I think a lot of times it's unproductive, and it's we need to be a people that love each other and that are kind to each other. I think kindness, respect, love, that's all very, very important. Now that being said as well, there are difficult discussions that we have to have as a society. And that's the role of these types of events and elections, because we have to, as a society, talk about the areas that we disagree on, because we're not all going to agree. I think that's very important to understand, that we're not all going to agree on everything, and that's okay. That is okay for us all to have different opinions about different areas, and that's fine, right? We're not all going to agree. But the point is that we tolerate other people's points of view, that we allow for free speech, and that we stand up for principle, and we stand up for people's rights that are sometimes trampled. So, you as young people, I think it's important that you participate in the democratic process, that you read the news, that you study this stuff. Obviously in social studies class and humanities classes, and you all read stories about some of the things that have happened in history when people don't respect each other. So I think that you as the next generation can set the tone. You can set the tone for a new, respectful society that communicates well, that sometimes agrees and sometimes agrees to disagree. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Olson, I'll go with you next. Do you need me to repeat the question, sir?
No, well, maybe for the group, I'm good, but maybe just so we're on the same page.
So the question again for the audience. Recently we have seen and heard a lot of negativity in the world. As mayor, what would you do to make Calgary a safer city for all citizens, regardless of their race, religion, or sexual orientation? 2 minutes, sir.
Well, I think as we think about that question, what would we expect from our mayor? You know, for me, professionalism and respect is really super important. You know, I've said in my workplace that I work for the largest business unit for the city of Calgary in a senior role. I've taken a leave of absence. I'm not making a salary. You know, the people that I work around, I say quite often to them that you should expect, well, I talk about being modeling and expect it, that you should expect professionalism and respect from me. I also expect that from you. But you cannot expect that if you don't model it. You know, it's one thing to say that, but if you don't model it, you cannot expect it. And I think, you know, it's that's such a critical point. You all will look at the candidates on this stage. You can look at all the different forms of social media. You know, that's really called social proof. You'll look at all the things that I've been a part of, and everything I've been talking about, and the communities that I've engaged with, the strength and diversity that I so hold close to my heart, and that's also my actions. Every single person in this room, there's a phrase that I was part of the development of a community collaborative a number of years ago, and it was a phrase that on the City LRT platform, I mentioned it the other night at the University of Calgary debate. It's a phrase that says all lives have equal value. So when someone walks through that door, if we're all working there together and someone walks through that back door, if you can get behind that, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to be there to help people. So I very much think that you know, going forward, you all should really, well, we all need to really inform ourselves, educate ourselves. You know, Nelson Mandela has a phrase: an educated man cannot be oppressed because he knows how to think for himself. Y'all are really the leaders of tomorrow. Y'all are very connected on social media. I'm only kind of doing Snapchat and everything else that goes with it, but I'm very connected on social media. I would encourage you guys to check that out, and you guys be the judge. And then you tell your parents, this is the type of individual that I want leading my city, that I can be proud of.
And time, sir. Thank you. Mr. Chisholm, you're up. Would you like me to repeat the question, sir?
Yes, everybody is equal, no matter what financial, sexual, or behavioral. Nobody's better than anybody else. A couple of my friends' kids, I said, hey, do what you gotta do to get the grades. And if you don't know something, ask your little sister. She could be better in that subject. And to his little sister, I says, you could be tutoring him and he could be tutoring you. That way, you get it together and you survive. But the nice thing about it is so many more doors are gonna open, and they have. Now this young gentleman, he's in college. And his little sister, I talked to her last week, and she says she thinks she's gonna get better this year, and she got on a roll last year. So all it takes is from within and people you know to help you get along. And if you don't know somebody, speak to them, and become best friends, who knows? Everybody has to listen and be heard. Say what you gotta say, but do it in a proper fashion instead of grabbing by the throat and throttling them. This way, people can exchange ideas and things will smooth out and get ahead. Instead of like the council, nothing happens. We're just bankrolling people's money, have a nice day. That can't be done anymore. I want to make sure that the people get their money's worth from the taxpayers.
30 seconds.
And I want to make this city a business-friendly and a person-friendly city. Take care.
Thank you, sir. I have 2 rebuttals, so gentlemen, I will give you 1 minute each. Mr. Heather, I will start with you. Do you need me to repeat the question for you, sir?
No, that's fine. A safe Calgary. We have identity politics, tribalism being practiced as a main political device. The politics of resentment and education-induced hostility to our main resource-based producers are reducing the unity and the safety of the city of Calgary. And there's a phrase here that's 200 years old. Never expect a free,
30
energetic,
seconds.
and wise government to originate in the votes of a people in servitude to their own vices. So the first thing about safety is self-governance. If we don't teach ourselves self-governance, that's the most basic order of government. And then the family, then the school, then the church, then we get to the civic government. These are all valid levels of government. We have to learn how to control ourselves, not let us
And
go off
time, sir.
the deep end with various excuses for bad behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nancy, would you like to repeat the question?
No, it's not.
You have 1 minute, sir.
When I was first elected, people thought that it was very interesting that someone who looked like me, a Muslim, was able to be mayor of a city in Western Canada. But for the first 5.5 years or so of this job, I never ever received any hateful, racist, or Islamophobic comments. Nowadays, every single day. Here in Calgary, we've had 4 marches against Muslims in downtown Calgary this summer. The world has changed.
30 seconds, sir.
And one of the reasons why I'm putting myself forward again is because those of us who believe in compassion and mercy and looking after one another, we won't be told to be polite and to stay in our place. We have to not be outshouted by the hateful and the intolerant and the small-minded. This is our most important job as citizens, to be able to stand up for the dignity of every single human being in this place. And you're not leaders of tomorrow. You're leaders today in making sure that we stand up for that dignity of every single person.
Thank you. I've taken the last 4 candidates out of the jar. Let me tell you who you are, even though you know. So, Mr. Gogo, Mr. Nenshi, Mr. Heather, and then what do we have here? Dr. Gabriel. So, your question, gentlemen, and we'll start with Mr. Gogo, since I drew your name first here. Okay. The question is, if elected, what would you do to make Calgary a more sustainable city? 2 minutes, sir.
Well, the first thing I'd do is suggest that we don't put up all those election signs, which are harmful for the environment. Solvent dyings, recycling of core plastic. You know what? This is how people communicate nowadays. I'm running my entire campaign from my iPhone. This is how you engage people nowadays. In the old days, you know, they used to put election signs up because you could count up the neighborhoods and kind of get a clear idea of the winner. There's a lot of obsolete ideas. If we want to make Calgary sustainable, we have to do it with innovation. We have to look ahead of the curve and see what's coming. But we also have to start completing them within a time frame when they're still relevant. Some of our current sort of projects that are still on the go, they're still studying them. They may have to change a year down the road. Things are moving really, really, really fast in this day and age. And, you know, in 10 years, like the initial question, things are going to change. I got a question. How many people in this room are of age to vote? Exactly. So this election is not up to your parents. This election is up to you. So if things like the environment matter to you, if things like public transport, feel free to ask why, and ask why things aren't getting done. But make sure, first and foremost, you get out to vote. Your vote does count. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nancy, you're up next. You have 2 minutes. You need me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. So the reason I initially ran for mayor was because I was concerned that Calgary was going down an unsustainable path. And when I talk about sustainability, I talk about it in 3 areas: fiscal, social, and environmental. So very briefly, fiscal sustainability actually means making sure that we can afford what we're doing. We can keep having the lowest property taxes of any big city in Canada. And unlike what you heard before, in fact, our debt's been going down. It was $3.6 billion in 2012. It was $3.2 billion last year. And we have a stellar credit rating, one of the best of any city in the country, and I'm very proud of that. In terms of social sustainability, we have to continue to build social infrastructure like rec centers and fire halls and libraries, places where people can gather. I grew up in the Forest Lawn Public Library. I was thrilled, in fact, with one of you in the room to reopen the Bob Behan pool because we were able to refurbish that old place where I learned to swim. These are things that are really important to make sure people can continue to be together in the same place. But I think the question was really about environmental sustainability. And in that case, we have to talk about the land, the air, and the water. So very briefly on land, the most important thing we do is land use planning to make sure new neighborhoods are more dense, are more sustainable, that people are commuting less, as well as managing our waste and recycling. The green bins are an important part of that, so I haven't quite figured out how to use mine, but I will. On air, investing in transit is incredibly important. So the big mess on 17th Avenue Southeast here is actually finally the city making good on promise we made to Forest Lawn many years ago to build the Southeast 17 Bus Rapid Transit Way, which is going to be amazing. And finally, water. We have an outstanding water treatment system, but we have to make sure to keep conserving water. We have to make sure our wastewater treatment works. And the most important thing in water sustainability is making sure that upstream flood mitigation gets built.
Thank you. Mr. Heather, sir, you have at the end, if you don't mind. Is that okay? Perfect. Mr. Heather, you have 2 minutes. Do you need me to repeat the question, sir?
No, a sustainable Calgary. First of all, the people, especially really little people, we need to stop killing unborn children in the womb. We need to stop it. Our replacement population rate is plummeting. And we have a sustainable Calgary. We need to go after those who are taking their lives. These pushers of fentanyl, I advocate capital punishment for them. They're directly putting death right out on the streets, and people you know are losing their lives daily on this. So the City of Calgary has morphed into an out-of-control planning monstrosity. Huge money expended on immense planning complexity 50 years in the future. Frequently far from accurate, financially viable, or wisely implemented. In nature, you have the illustration of gigantism. A tumor on the pituitary gland causes growth hormone spurts. It causes harmful overgrowth in body parts like the hands, the feet, the head. Civic gigantism deeply afflicts Calgary, caused by divisive identity tribalism. This breeds neglect to essential city duties like deliberate traffic congestion and dirty 30s weeds proliferations. Insane arts like Beaufort burial platform. Secondly, we find needless replication of provincial departments within the city structure, bloating the staff, biodiversity, arts and culture, Calgary Eats, it goes on. Proliferation of programs costing millions of dollars to implement and overlapping many of the business units. Overuse of specialist consultants is rife. I advocate letting go 1/3 of the staff of the City of Calgary will lose their job, primarily middle management.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Gabriel, you are up, sir. The question again is, if elected, what would you do to make Calgary a more sustainable city? You have 2 minutes, sir.
The word here is sustainability. What does it mean? As I mentioned earlier, at least guarantee you the basic rights of having a decent job, a decent place to live, and a decent income. Is this happening now? No, it's not. So I'm presenting to you a platform. When you go on my website, I call it airtight platform. As a consultant, I'm a consultant and consult with big companies, show them how to manage companies. They ask me a question, what the first thing you need to do to succeed? The first thing you need to do is to lead by example as a leader. So examine my platform. I'm leading by example in 2 major areas. First, I'm the only candidate here willing to take a pay cut in my salary because many of you and parents are out of job. But the current council and the mayor have the highest salaries. I was not willing to take any pay cut to set an example. Second, I'm the only candidate here is committed to term limits because I'm running here to serve you, not to make a career out of it. This is the proof. Number 3, I'm taking my skills as a manager to the city because the policies and bylaws in the city is outdated. It's not helping business to grow. It's not helping anybody to get anything done. This has to be reformed and made simple. Taxes are high. And the mayor last year in December went to the province and asked for extra taxation power. You don't solve a problem by extra taxation power. You solve it by proper management. So I'm inviting you to look at my platform and compare, so see who has the most airtight plan of action that really going to help the city to sustain its economy and grow and provide opportunity for each one of you to have a decent job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe Mr. Olson, you wanted to do a rebuttal. Is there anybody else who still has their rebuttal card that would like to use this time? Sorry? There's just one more question and then your closing argument. So
There's
it's all yours,
30
sir. You get 1 minute.
Well, 1 minute, okay. So we think about sustainability, that's a big word. Sustainability, really, we got to think about is kind of a better way to think about it, just for all of us, is what we're doing, does it make sense? And is there value to it? Is it understandable? For a number of years, our City of Calgary website had just one search bar on it, just one search bar. And the reality of it is when that happens, we have blurry government. We don't have anything really being made properly. We don't have people making decisions properly. If you go to Apple, you know their entire business. You go to different cities, you can see exactly what they have. So there's a phrase called "risk is not knowing what you're doing." I also know that those dollars are spent from my role within the city of Calgary, some of the grad studies urban planning, that those dollars are not being spent well. And when they're at the end of the year, those dollars, they empty the cash drawer and they say pay up again. That's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable process to say we're just going to spend the dollars in the last day of the year, millions of them, and then expect people to pay up when they don't have jobs, and especially when you're a young folks looking for jobs in the future.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Lack, you have 1 minute, sir.
I'll weigh in on this one. So I'm sure many of you at home, when you're with your families, your parents will instruct you, to put certain items in certain containers for recycling. And I think there's been a lot of confusion about the new green bins, blue bins, black bins, right? People don't know how to use them. So I think that the communication around these need to be improved because confusion is never helpful. As well, there's been concerns though about perhaps the overreach of this program. Perhaps it's gone a bit too far because you have private companies that are profiting from this waste management scheme and recycling private companies that are benefiting from this recycling scheme. So I think that's quite concerning. So it's not just about the environment, it's about the fact that there's private entities that are profiting from this.
And that's time, sir. Thank you. So our final round of questions. I have one question that all of you will answer. If it's okay, we'll start with Mr. Heather and work our way down. You each get 2 minutes. I will read you the question to start. There is no rebuttals on this one, so don't bother holding it up. I won't pay attention to you, okay? Here we go. Your question is, communities in East Calgary, such as Forest Lawn, are often considered less desirable districts to live in. What is your plan for revitalization of these areas? Mr. Heather, you have 2 minutes, sir.
That's a good question to ask. We have the current 17th Avenue revitalization of International Avenue. If you look at what happened to the Main Streets program on 16th Avenue North, you'll see how ineffective this is going to be. They put, wider sidewalks, they put big planters in the middle of the street, and it had the effect of cutting visual recognition of the other side of the street off. You get to see a planter rather than the other side of the street. I don't know how that helps local business. But last fall, I took a look at about 1.5 years after this had been opened, and I went up to the planter and took pictures. It was full of weeds, folks. 1.5 years after it was open, full of weeds. The community standards bylaw is continually being violated throughout this city. And I believe in what you call the New York broken window theory, that if you see a mess that's unattended to, it invites crime, it invites disrespect, it lowers the respect for the neighbors themselves of the neighborhood they're living in. So on Elbow Drive, I pulled a bunch of weeds in front of the crosswalk that goes to Henry Wisewood High School just 3 weeks ago. It was covering the signal box for the people to
30
cross.
seconds.
So in the back of this house, a bunch of cement dropped into the alleyway. If you want to improve a district, you don't allow prostitutes stroll to be moved from Inglewood down to 17th Avenue, Forest Lawn. Some of you have been recruited or been tempted to recruit for this. You don't handle this, you don't improve a district by doing this kind of stuff.
Time. Thank you. Candidates, I'll remind you of your audience, if you don't mind. All right, so Mr. Chisholm, you are up. Do you need me to read the question again, sir? 2 minutes.
That's why I would like to speak at a community association location and listen to what the people would like to have their community involved in and brought up in, and how things can be diversified for the betterment of that location and the city at the same time. Because the person that doesn't live there doesn't know. They can have hearsay, but if it's not from the people, they're clueless. So I'd like to hear from each community association, yours included, on how to better the area in your location and what employment prospects could evolve out of such. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gogo, you have 2 minutes. Would you like me to repeat the question, sir?
No thanks. You know, it's interesting, that term, less desirable. You know, the only thing missing from something like that could be a term like community. The thing about these neighborhoods they refer to as less desirable, they're opportunities. You know, they're not gonna tear down a brand new subdivision they just built, but they're not gonna start bringing businesses into those neighborhoods. They're not gonna start opening Starbucks, they're not gonna start opening all kinds of different businesses, local and national. You know, the thing about a neighborhood is, when you bring art into a neighborhood, it's a little bit more desirable. When you start to utilize the park through community programs, maybe some movies in the park, get to know your neighbors, it becomes a safer community. A community can become very, very vibrant, very, very quick. And we saw that. Even areas of, you know, Bonas, all kinds of areas all over the city where people referred to them as less desirable. It's really about the people who live there. Now, when you're getting flurry punched by the province and you're getting flurry punched by the feds, the city shouldn't be flurry punching you. They shouldn't be raising the taxes in that area, because that area is an area of opportunity. People entering the business, you know, maybe they can, why do you think Inglewood grew the way they did? You know, people could afford to open a business there, whether it was a record store, whether it was an art gallery. But how can we expect to revitalize neighborhoods if we can't get things done? We've got to focus on a city council that communicates directly to their constituents, which all of you are, to be able to address these issues. But we have to finish these things we started 7 years ago. We've got to get things done. The arena, got to get it done. Flood mitigation, got to get it done. Secondary housing, got to get it done. The list is endless.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ellison, you have 2 minutes. Do you need me to repeat the question, sir?
Maybe just so we're on the same page, I'm good, but maybe just we're on the
Okay,
same
one
page.
more time for everybody else. Communities in East Calgary, such as Forest Lawn, are often considered less desirable districts to live in. What is your plan for revitalization of these areas? 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, so let's think about Calgary for a minute. All communities in Calgary, every citizen in Calgary matters. You know, my seed plan, my campaign plan for the next 3 weeks really focuses on governing, living. This speaks about our living, but it really highlights every community, and it highlights the work that we need to do in every community. There's a phrase that says, all boats rise with the tide. And so it's about doing things for all Calgarians. When we do that, that's exactly what's important to see happen. I think as we go down the road, there are a lot of things that are going to be said over this election. And there's been promises made. and those who can vote in the room are going to be maybe swayed by that. The last election in 2013, professionally speaking, our current mayor, the night of the election, all the different promises that happened, the website goes down. What I'm going to be proposing with the C Plan YYC as we go forward, you can download it, you can find it on my website. It's going to be rolled out every day for the next 3 weeks. It's going to benefit every Calgarian. I can say that because I'm not tied to the special interest establishment funding. But what's even more disturbing is that our local media is not covering my campaign for mayor. So I'm going to prompt you, I'm going to ask you to rise up with me. I'm going to Global Calgary at 5 p.m. today. At the nomination date, they said we can't talk to you, we won't talk with you. At our debate day, there was no coverage. At my media launch, there was no coverage. What I'm saying is going to benefit every single Calgarian, that's a fact. Not any other candidate will say that. They can't say that because when they listen to voices that are funding them for $5,000, cash for access, or special, or old boys establishment, they will never listen to you. They might say they will, but they will never even care about what you're saying. They will want your vote, and then their websites will go down the night of the election. You'll have what my C plan is going to be for the next 2 or 3 years. I can come back here in 2 years and say, where are you at? And I'll say exactly where I'm at. But I'm asking you to say with your social media, why is our local media not covering Curtis Olson's campaign for mayor? This is your chance to activate that. I'm going to be at Global News at 5 o'clock tonight, and I'll be doing a video from that and talk about that for our city.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Manchin, 2 minutes.
Thanks. So the question was about East Calgary. Of course, I've always lived in East Calgary, except for when I didn't. In Calgary, I grew up in East Calgary. I live in Northeast Calgary now, and I think it's fair to say that successive generations of politicians have made empty promises to this part of the city. The cover of our municipal development plan is a picture of what 17th Avenue Southeast could look like, and we never did anything. So I was happy to be able to spearhead the funding for the BRT on 17th Avenue, which will also lead to massive improvements in the streetscape, making it much more pleasant for pedestrians, for people who are connecting to the bus transit way, as well as for the businesses to front onto the street. And I think it's not symbolic, it's actually very real. But I think changes like that show that the city is willing to invest in these neighborhoods. That's why we fixed up Bob the Hand Pool. That's why we continue to invest here. And if I could give you a couple of quick examples about things that we're doing in East Calgary to really make sure that these neighborhoods remain desirable. In the community of Albert Park, Radisson Heights, just about 4 blocks from here, there's a former school site called David Oughton School, and I have made that the #1 priority for the city for redevelopment to make sure that it is so beautiful that it causes that whole neighborhood, which is such a great neighborhood, to become even more desirable. As we move further up the line, we are in the middle of a community action plan for Rundle. If you were a real estate agent and you said you can live in a neighborhood where there's a hospital, a C-train, a whole bunch of public schools, and a major leisure center already there, that's what neighborhoods want. And Rundle has it all. So how do we make that more desirable and make sure that that redevelopment works? And finally, action on secondary suites will kick out some of the slumlords from these neighborhoods, particularly in East Calgary, to make sure that everyone has safe, decent places to live, which will also improve the social fabric. So East Calgary is where I'm from. It's deep in my heart. And finally, we're making good on promises that the politicians have made to this community forever.
Mr. Laxley, you have 2 minutes. Can you repeat the question?
No, I love this question actually.
Okay. You have 2 minutes.
I'm actually really glad you answered this. You asked this question because think about this for a moment. We have a mayor currently that is from East Calgary. He's been the mayor of Calgary for almost a decade. And I ask you this: is the city, particularly this part of town, better off than it was 7 years ago, just because we have a mayor from East Calgary? He referenced the term empty promises. Folks, I would suggest to you that's what we had with the current mayor. We don't just need empty rhetoric. We need someone who's going to fight for this area of the city. This area of the city has been neglected by its politicians for decades. This area of the city is the most ethnically diverse and youngest part of the whole country. And you know that in Forest Lawn, there's more home ownership per capita than in any part of the city. So what does that tell you? it tells you this part of the city is a wonderful part of the city, but it's been neglected. The streets are falling apart. The snow is not getting cleared. I question the mayor's claim that you were being that you're being represented well, because you're not. We can do better than this. We can empower families. We can empower community associations. We can empower our schools and our youth to make sure that the next generation is getting quality representation and is participating in government. You are the next generation, and you can demand better. There's a quote that a Greek philosopher once said, and he said, apathy towards public affairs, the cost of apathy, towards public affairs is to be ruled over by evil men. And so I suggest to you that we challenge the current leadership and demand much better. We can do so much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gabriel, you can repeat the question. Okay, 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I talked to you about leadership by example. Also, you learn from other people. You have role models in your life. And I learned a valuable lesson when Mother Teresa spoke and said, the noblest thing to do is to start with the poorest of the poor. I lived in Forest Lawn when I have a small business in the food. And I know how you feel as a second-class citizen. So the solution here is all based on the economy. When you have the chance to study how the cities run and you learn about the amount of waste alone. Beaufort, for example, $500,000 gun. Imagine if I came here today with the $500,000, I just gave it to you instead of giving it to somebody outside the country. The duplication in the city is so bad. You see, I want to clear something with you because I'm a manager, I'm not a politician. I have nothing against Mr. Nanchi. I like him, he's a nice guy, and I'm willing to give him a hug. If he is okay with that. But it's about management. Do you have the knowledge and the experience how to manage the city, how to manage people's money? It's all about the economy. If we manage the city properly, we will have money to take care of Forest Lawn. Not only that, for you who knows about my background, I was born in Egypt, few miles away from the pyramids. And I tell you, when you elect me, you're going to see magnificent building in this city. We're going to start with Forest Lawn, as Mother Teresa gave me that example. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, gentlemen, let me thank you for all the questions that you answered. I'm going to give you 1 minute for your final closing statements. If it's okay, we'll start with you, Dr. Gabriel, and we'll work our way this way since we started the other way last time. So you get to go again.
Okay,
So 1 minute to make your final closing statement, sir.
Well, I thank you again for this opportunity. And as I said, I lived in this area when I had my small business. This election is so critical for your future. Let me repeat because it's so important. For you, when you go and decide who you're going to select for a mayor or for a council, ask them this question because you want to screen who's the right person for the job. Ask them, for example, if they are willing to commit themselves to term limits. Term limits will solve lots of problems because it's going to attract the right people, not the people who are looking for a career. Ask them if they are willing to consider the current economic situation in our city and many people out of job, and they're willing to show sincerity by, say, taking a pay cut. I have a smart plan how I'm going to take my pay cut. I'm going to explain it in my Facebook. So ask this question to screen who can be the right person to lead the city. Then look at the qualification. Leadership, by example, is so important, then the qualification. This city is a growing city. We have infrastructure, project, urban planning. Who has the experience to be ready from day one to run this city successfully? Please think carefully about this question and ask it of your election. Thank you.
Mr. Laxford, 1 minute. Tell us your closing argument.
Thank you. Thanks again for being here and taking time of your classes to be here. Honestly, this was a wonderful discussion, and I'm very, very pleased that we could have this today. Folks, as I've said before, this is a generational election. This is a changing of the guard. It's a passing of the baton, like in an Olympic race, from one runner to another. And folks, that's what we're looking at today. We're looking at who is the next person to lead the city. There are some big issues ahead of us, but I believe that together we can do it. Folks, just like some of you, I struggled in high school. I didn't get my high school diploma. I ended up getting my GED, my general equivalency diploma from Bow Valley College. So you know what? Our city, just like myself, you know, we've all gone through some tough things, but we can recover as a city. We can come back as a city. And I believe that the next generation that's coming up, we have the energy, we have the ideas to do it, to make it right, to get our economy recovering again.
It's time, sir.
And folks, we can do it together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. 1 minute to make your closing argument, sir.
Thank you. First of all, thanks again to everyone at Forest Lawn and to Youth Central for hosting us today. 3 weeks from today, you and your families get to face a choice. 7 years ago, we made a decision that the old Calgary, a Calgary of elites, a Calgary of people who were not engaged in the community, just wasn't good enough anymore. And 3 weeks from today, we have the opportunity to make another choice. Do we want to keep our face firmly turned towards the future, towards the kind of city we want to be on the global stage? Or do we want to move backwards? Do we want to retrench? Do we want to become a smaller and a meaner place? I think that choice is very, very, very clear. Over the next 3 weeks, I'll talk more about how we build a better economy, how we ensure stronger and safer communities for everyone, how we create a smarter city hall. All of those things together are about making sure that every single citizen here gets to share in the prosperity of this place. That every single citizen here is all about living a life of dignity. I hope on October 16th you'll be able to support me and we'll keep building Calgary together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank each of you for being here too. You know, I look at the room and I just see all the faces. I see such amazing potential, and I really do look forward to the future for our city. We should for a moment just think about our democracy. We should really love our democracy. In 3 weeks, you'll be able to have the chance to vote. And doing that, you should really be informed. And what I'm going to ask you, well, what I'm going to say to you is my C plan is really a comprehensive plan for this platform, but it's a work plan going forward for the next 4 years when I'm elected mayor. I'm going to ask you to really value our democracy.
30 seconds.
You know, a democracy, we should raise our voice. And right now, I mentioned it before, our current media in the city is not covering my campaign for mayor. It's not funded, as I've said, by any special interest groups or any establishment groups, people who are fighting those individuals. But I'm going to ask you to really raise your voice. I'm very connected on social media. You will know my plan if you take 5 minutes, that this is a plan that's going to benefit every Calgarian. I'm going to be at Global News tonight at 5 o'clock. CTV tomorrow night, and the day after, we're going to go on up. So I encourage you to rise up with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. 1 minute to...
Starting now. You know, the reason I entered this race, guys, is because I felt we're at a dangerous place in Calgary. The stagnation of city council, the things that haven't gotten done in the last 7 years, that leads to apathy. Apathy leads to low voter turnout, disenfranchisement, the list goes on. We've got to get things done. We can't continue talking about this. You know, at the forums I'm at, I see grown men on stage, not arguing about the issues, arguing about donors lists. You know, my dad has a saying, believers believe in something, fanatics never change the subject. It's time to get a healthy debate going about the issues that will affect us. All the circular weasel words that are thrown to sidestep the issues, I can't really tell you who's at fault for the issues. All I know is they haven't been done, and the lack of transparency at City Hall is why we can't make an educated decision. On October 16th, go,
Thank
vote.
you. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you declared the bell, but we're going to give our last 2 candidates their 1 minute to say what they need before I release you, so thank you. Mr. Chisholm.
Yeah, I don't want to waste your lunchtime, but you guys got excellent cookies. Keep it up, and I'd like to place a few orders. Okay, I would like to have the politicians that have been in the city hall to quit blowing smoke because it's giving everybody cancer. Get things done and be accountable for what you're allegedly doing. Pitter patter, get at her, get her done. Why wait and waste people's time and money just to fill your pockets? Yes, again. I want to be held accountable along with all the council persons And if there's something wrong in your community, get a hold of me if your alderperson doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Heather, 1 minute, sir.
Yes, Larry Heather at Calgary Senate Twitter. Check out my dance moves at Metro Video. And I've been thrown out of council two times by Mayor Nenshi. It's a badge of honor for me. Fake news favors the incumbent, so make sure you get information from your alternate media. LarryForCalgary.ca. We're living in an age of declining moral standards and increasing disorder. You see this in the degradation of the definition of family and new sexual aberrations, multiplying every year to new bizarre manifestations. Controlling socialists would like nothing better than to trap you in a web of self-bondage, where your choices make you unable to practice self-governance. And self-governance is your key to freedom, and Jesus Christ can help you with that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hang on. Can I, these gentlemen, most of you, sorry, who can vote again? Who's old enough to vote here? So, those of you, congratulations. I hope these candidates have done something for you. The rest of you, they're here as a learning experience for you. So how about a round of applause for our candidates? So, thank you, Youth Central. Thank you, candidates. Enjoy your lunch, ladies and gentlemen.